Hello and welcome to Elvenhome and to this edition, which focuses very much on the work to create High Elven as something more than just a few buildings and a little bit of track. So let's get straight into the work that I've been doing over the last couple of weeks of really creating High Elven. I thought I would show you what it's like when work is in progress. This kind of arrangement, which has the board for High Elven, only occurred to me as an easy way to work underneath it. Once the buildings are on, the buildings are not intended to be stuck down, because if I need to replace any of the lights, I need to be able to remove them. And that obviously makes it quite tricky to work on it, given that if I tip it upside down, well, first of all, once you've ballasted, if you tip it upside down, who knows what might fall off. But I've worked out suddenly that I can just about lash together so that this is level, and I'll show you underneath where the power distribution board is that will feed the power to all the lamps. But this section here and this section here have just been ballasted. I've used ballast magic on the top here, partly because I just thought it might, well, I've given the danger of stuff running, I was happier using the ballast magic, which I've got on with perfectly well. It did a great part of the layout, actually, come to think about it. About easily 3/4, and it's only recently that I've moved to using the more traditional method. So that's all on. The points are all working at the moment. I haven't actually run a train over them yet because obviously I haven't got any power to this section, and that's got to be left to dry now. But with these last two sections and the section that I've completed over on the layout, I actually have finished the ballasting on Elvenhome. There is no more ballasting to be done. Hurrah! So the intention now for me is to let this all dry, and then I will obviously want to put it on its place on the board, plug it all in and make sure everything's working. Once I've got that done, it will probably come off again to go on here for me to start thinking about the other scenic work up here, so that I can then get it permanently or semi-permanently fitted into the onto the layout. As you can see, there are some screw holes here, and the idea is that this goes onto the two battens that you can see over there and will be screwed into them so that it's fixed. But if I need to, I can just take the screws out and lift it off. Once I've got most of this done, not all of the scenic work up here done, but most of it done and up on the layout, then I can do the bits that sit in front, which are the bits that are probably the trickiest. The power distribution board is underneath. Let me just take you down and show you the power distribution board. You've seen these before, and all the lights are going into that. They're all 3 volts lights, so there's actually a 12 volt supply coming into the power board, and it steps them all down to 12 volts, 3 volts. That would be fun. And that will give me those, and there's enough for me to put about 5 or 6 more lamps on, which I will do. Well, I will certainly do before I put this back on the layout, so that I might try and work that out in the next day or two. The basic idea, this is roughly in the position that it goes when it's on the layout. I can't lay it flat because there's a clamp at the other end which is holding this to the main layout. I'll disguise the fact that a road comes in here. This is the entrance to the station, which you don't really see actually, but I will do something around here that takes the entrance to the station probably up to about there, and then a gate and a fence that will block all of this off. But this, by the way, is a side of the station that you don't normally see. Let me try and get out the light and give you a look at that side of the station, the entrance to the station, because of course it's got its back to you when I built it. This is the little signal box that I adapted from a design of Paul from Galgorm Hall, who seems to have somewhat disappeared. But anyway, he designed that and built it for his layout, and I said I'd have a go at trying to shrink it down to N gauge. A very useful exercise. It's much, much harder than you think. It's not just a case of saying, oh, it's all 52%, because some of the sizes of things like window frames and things get very, very small, much too small for you to be able to use them. So the power comes, as I've done with the other ones, using these male and female chop blocks, and that comes up, this is a bit dark here, to this, and the power source that I bought from Gauge Master had a handy little unit on it which allowed a 16-volt AC supply, which is what's running most other things, which takes the power to the track. No, it doesn't take the power to the track. What am I talking about? Is for the point motors with its CDU, but it also has a handy little gizmo that gives a 12-volt supply off it as well, with a rectifier and things to change the current. So that's all coming off of the one plug unit, and that will allow me then to plug everything in, so that if I need to take the board off, I can. And when I build at the front here, I will build it so that it can be removed, and then I can get in, undo the plugs, unscrew the screws that will be holding the top board onto here, and take it off. And once I've got the upper board largely done, I don't have to have it completed, then I can turn my attention to getting all of this stuff around the front here done. But it is somewhat of a red letter day that we've completed all the ballasting. The last bit of ballasting on this part of the layout was this section here, and that's been ballasted with the more traditional method, and I will come and have a look at that tomorrow just to make sure. It was fairly straightforward. It was dead straight track, so there was no points or anything. Let me just take you around. So that's the kind of state of chaos in which I currently am. And next time you see me, I hope it will be a little more organised. Well, as you can see, I've completed the ballasting and everything's working. All the lights are on, which is good. This is just a very quick thing, just to show you before I go on to the next stage, because what I want to do now is I'll take this back off the board, put it where it was, and start doing some of the scenic work, and I'll show you that what I'm going to be doing in a moment. But I did want to let you see at this point that all the ballasting is done. I've run the train over or the locomotive over all the tracks, and they all work. The points are all working at the moment and making good contact. So that, therefore, is the end of ballasting on Elvenhome. My, what a pleasant thought. Okay, speak to you again in just a moment. As you can see, I've been working on this board. There were now a couple of days after the last section that you saw. I've put some Javis dark earth down around the ballasted area that I had completed in the last section, and I've also put some sand. This is drying. I must stop touching it. This is drying now, so I've just got to leave this alone, let it dry. I'll come back to that probably tomorrow. And this, I'm going to complete the work on this side. I'll show you my hands. I've recorded this once before, and one of the major problems, well, there was two. One, I forgot to put the microphone in, so I was whispering away to myself. And secondly, I kept pointing at things off camera, so you couldn't see what on earth I was talking about. So this area, I will probably, I'm just musing how I'm going to dull that down, because this is going to be a kind of gravelly car park area, or well, car park entrance area. I don't think there were many car parks really, not because, as I've said many times before, private car hire or ownership rather, during the time that I'm modelling was really quite low. So I don't need to have a big car park, but an area where cars could pull up and then turn around and clear off. This area will be open to the road, and there'll be a fence going along here, along the back of the engine shed. And then I'm going to use an old railway crossing gate. I've got one spare, which I'm going to position in here somewhere as the entrance to get into this part by the side of the engine shed. I've got the coal stave or coal position to go on there. I've got to put a water crane in as well somewhere here. Probably I would think the crane would be about there somewhere, so they can coal and water the engine. And I'll probably put an ash pile here, because I think the ash from the engine would just be tossed out onto the ground and then collected up, barrowed and taken away at some point, or maybe even just taken to another part of the site and dumped there. That might happen, and then every now and then it would be collected up and put on the back of a lorry and taken off somewhere. As you know, there's the raised area, terraced area where the houses are and the two shops that's going to sit here, and that then leaves me what I might do in this corner before I put the board on. I can actually work along there quite easily if I haven't put the houses in, which I probably will do, rather than trying to get it all done now, because some of what goes in here really depends what it looks like once it's back on the layout. But this I will paint in the same grey that I've used for the roads elsewhere, and I'll decide what I'm going to do at the far end. Can you see my finger? Yes, at the very far end, once that's back on the board. And similarly, although I'm going to complete the scenic work here, probably by putting a row of bushes all along here, maybe a fence with the bushes in front of the fence, I'll see. I'm not going to do too much more here, because I'll want to blend whatever I'm doing here with the rock facing that's going to be in that position. And I've got, and you probably saw it briefly, this sits over a screw hole, so I'm not going to light this, but it's a very handy way of hiding the screw hole, in just the way, if I come across to here, that this little building is hiding the other screw hole. So I'm pretty pleased with how I'm going here. I hope the next bit, that when you see it the next time, it'll be ready to go back up on the layout. So I will have painted this down, which is and done the work that I said I would do along here, and that I think, and put the gates and the fences on, and that I think will be enough until I have it back on the layout in its position and screwed into position, which is quite exciting. The only other thing that I'm working on, which I've started doing, and I showed it all before, so what I will probably do at this point is use a bit of the old film that I've already taken. So I'll just cut to what I'm doing about this bridge and how I'm going to work on the bridge before I show you what it looks like once it's finished. I was musing about this bridge and the fact that it's completely, the lattice work goes on the underside of the bridge. And if you've seen any bridges or across any bridges when trains go across them, that's not common, it has to be said. And rather helpfully, ScotRail have on their website a picture of a train, I think it's a DMU, going across the Forth Bridge. So you get a really good chance over the, 2 kilometres that the bridge is long, to see what it looks like as you go across a girded bridge, essentially. And I think what I'm going to do, I've got one piece already here. This is the track that will go on the bridge, and the bridge starts here, and it actually runs right up to the end here. And what I've discovered is that a piece of 0.75 millimeter by 2.5 millimeter strip styrene fits in there just nicely. And I've cut 40 odd of these little devils. And what I'm now going to do is fill them in. So this is completely filled in from there to there. I may not be able to do it over here, but you won't see that much. And then what I'm going to do is I've got some 0.6 millimeter wire. And I think what I'll be able to do then is fit the 0.6 millimeter wire onto the plastic just inside where the plastic chairs are. And that should give me the look of check rails, which you would expect to have on a bridge of this kind. So we'll see if that comes off. That's the bit of work that I'm going to do next. And in the next section, I'll show you how I've got on with that. As you've just seen from the running session, I've completed the work on, well, so far, this is probably, I suspect, 30% of the work that will be needed up the top here. But I've done enough to be able to get this permanently into its place. So the screws have gone in around the corner. They can come out perfectly easily. They're all accessible. And then I can lift this off if I need to, but I'm hoping that I won't need to. I think I've ran this enough times not to cause me a problem now, he said, but we'll wait and see. Once I put all the stuff on the front, of course, it will start playing me up, but I'll deal with that as and when it happens. What have I done on there? You saw, from the last time you saw it, I've put the fencing in. You can just about see, you probably can't actually, you're a bit too low. There's also some fencing gone in between the station building and the corner here. I will do a drone shot by hand in just a moment and put that up while I'm talking now. The coal stays have gone into its permanent place and everything's been tested. Trains go past. This has been tested. Wagons can go in there. In fact, the locomotive can make the journey right the way through and out again, although I don't imagine locomotives would often go in there, or at least if they did, I wouldn't want to be inside it. Everything's on and working. The lights are all on. There's two new lamps, one here and one the other side of the station, that have gone in place. I've put all these back on. These are going to be lighted. I think I'm going to need to do something about masking light bleed from behind here. And the far one suddenly leans forward, but I think a bit of two-sided tape on the back will correct that without too much trouble. And obviously the work here, just move you around a little bit, there you go. All of this along here will get its scenic work once the front goes on, and I'll decide finally what's going to be in this position. I suspect nothing more than probably a continuation of the fencing or some fencing here, to stop people falling off the edge of the cliff. Yes, that's what they call them. Yeah, these are okay, so that pretty much, I think. Oh no, one thing I did want to tell you. This is scale model scenery fencing, and I've used it in various places, and one of the things that has always challenged me is drilling 0.7mm holes at the right distance apart so that the posts go down into it. And I was thinking to myself, wouldn't it be good if they did some sort of jig which had the holes exactly the right part? And it occurred to me that in every kit, intentionally or not, they do indeed give you a jig, which is this thing. This is the offcut from the sheet which the posts come in. And of course, let me just get some focus. Of course, the holes are absolutely perfectly, because that's what it's cut from. And this worked a treat. So I just drilled through each of the holes. All my holes were perfectly aligned, and the fence just slotted straight into the holes that had been drilled. So, little tip from me if that one hasn't already occurred to you. And it really does make life very simple in drilling the holes to allow the fence posts to go in. Now, as I said, I think that pretty much brings this edition of Elvenhome to a close. If you've got any comments, please do let me have any comments, because they're always helpful and I really enjoy getting them. If you've liked the video, give it a thumbs up. That's really very helpful. And if you haven't subscribed, well, please do subscribe as I complete this last section for the scenic work. And then it's a case of going back across the layout and starting to put the detail in, because I've got every part of the layout pretty much to where I needed it to be able to move on to the next bit. But I'm very conscious that there's lots of detail. I've yet to complete all the work around the canal. The gasworks needs more detail put into it, so does the depot. Grey Havens needs revisiting, not least because only this morning there was a storm and one of the trees has come down. Several of the trees look particularly anemic and have lost most of their leaves, and I've got to do something about the vicarage. I would like lights in the vicarage, but I can't get lights into that building as it currently is. So lots and lots for me to do, and if you fancy being along for the ride, then please do subscribe. But the next things for me to do is starting to fill all of this area in here and blending the top of High Elven down into what sits below. So until I speak to you again in about a fortnight's time, that's goodbye from me. Bye bye.